Wizards of the Coast has been woke for years at this point, and nothing they do can surprise any of us, but in a move that is infuriating players, they've now announced that they are avoiding using the term witch because it is a real-world religious identifier, and they're even considering retiring Druid and Shaman for the same reason. I have a few different things that I want to show off, but before we get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, follow me on social media, and consider supporting through Patreon or via YouTube memberships. So, starting with this Bounding into Comics article, it says in continuing their campaign to make their once beloved tabletop offerings as inclusive and unoffensive as possible, Magic the Gathering head designer Mark Rosewater has revealed that not only has Wizards of the Coast in totality begun avoiding the term witch because it's a real-world religious identifier, but the company is also looking to retire the Druid and Shaman character types for the same reason. Now, even though he is the head designer for Magic the Gathering, we are talking about Wizards of the Coast in general, and this isn't really that surprising, unfortunately. I used to really love Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons. I've collected so many cards and products over the years, but unfortunately, Wizards of the Coast has gone extremely woke. I mean, they have become a group of activists so quickly, and obviously the individuals in the company are going to have their individual opinions, but unfortunately that's not the way that the company really works anymore. It's basically you have to agree with our politics or else you don't get jobs and you don't get in, and they have hired some real characters over the past few years. Of course, the most notable one that I'm sure you all are going to remember is Sam Maggs. She said that she was graped in Grand Theft Auto Online years and years ago, and that's how she kind of got her start around the start of Gamergate. And then, of course, she most recently was working on the Knights of the Old Republic remake, and then she claimed that she quit because she went on to become a designer for Wizards of the Coast / Dungeons and Dragons more specifically, and that's all that we really heard. The rumor is that she didn't actually quit, she got fired, but regardless, they definitely hire a very specific type of person now, and we have seen them do things like this quite a lot over the past couple of years. I'll show a few examples in a minute, but it says Rosewater, who has served his current position since 2003, confirmed Wizards of the Coast's new approach to such terms while speaking with fans on his personal Tumblr blog. Somebody asked, why isn't witch a type? It seems like a much stronger identity than warlock, and then he said witch is a real world religious identifier, so we chose to avoid it. Following up on the question, another player further pressed if witch is excluded because of its significance as a real-world religious identifier, why are shaman and druid creature types? And he revealed that we are currently examining that exact topic, but it becomes a slippery slope, right? So it started with witch, then they were asked about shaman and druid, but there are so many other terms that would fall under this umbrella that would have to subsequently be removed. I mean, this is just absurd for so many reasons. Look at Dungeons and Dragons Druids specifically, okay? They've been around since the very start, and the ideas of shamans and witches were put into later editions, but they are ideas and concepts that have been in the game for a really long time. Shamans and witches are both in the SRD for 5e, and witch has been used to describe evil characters, which is consistent with fairy tales. Sure, there's people in real life who say they're witches, and shamans are real, and druids were real, but again, so are, clerics. So they're saying that those terms are offensive, but cleric is not. They're getting ridiculous with what's on the offensive list at this point, and that means that going forward, they're going to re-examine every class and every type and seeing, what else kind of falls under this, and I'm sure that we're going to see even more things either removed or altered that are similar, again, like clerics. And of course, fantasy, although not real, is based on reality, and you're never going to get away from that. Even if they start to remove, shamans and druids and witches, there's always going to be another problem that people are going to have, right? Oh, well, we were offended with these terms because they're religious identifiers, but what about this one? And what about that one? And then, oh, yes, we will bend the knee to you guys and we'll remove those terms, and it's just always going to be an issue. There's always going to be something else. But unfortunately, like I mentioned, Wizards of the Coast has done several things like this over the past few years. Wizards of the Coast, back in 2021, had removed lore deemed problematic from Dungeons and Dragons, and they had basically said that going forward, this was going to be their plan. And now they're just following through with that plan, which is just very unfortunate. But yeah, anything deemed problematic has been slowly removed from Dungeons and Dragons. And we've also got this from September 2022, so a year ago. Wizards of the Coast removes offensive Hadozi captivity lore from D&D following accusations of racism. This is why you should never start removing content from your games, because there's always going to be someone who's going to find a reason to complain about whatever we're talking about. In this case, it was offensive captivity lore, and that, faced accusations of racism. Now we've got religious, real world identifiers. I mean, it is just a slippery slope, and they are very quickly toning back all of their content to the point where people like me who supported them for years and years and years no longer want to. I don't want to support a watered down tabletop game. That's just not the content that I want to consume and spend my money on, and it's unfortunate, but I don't see them changing for the better anytime soon. This article also says Rosewater did even further note that despite both terms being placed under consideration for removal of the game, the addressing of one was considered by Wizards of the Coast to be more pressing than others. Somebody asked another follow-up on the witch question, is there a particular reason it is more acceptable in card names than as a creature type? And then he went on to respond with creature types are used for vocabulary, for how people group cards together in a way card titles aren't. For example, priest has existed in card games since the early days of Magic, but no one is building a priest deck. Our issue is people using vocabulary as game terms in a way where it takes meaning beyond just identifying a particular card. It's sad, but this is the norm from Wizards of the Coast at this point. I used to love Magic the Gathering. Unfortunately, I don't really support that anymore. Dungeons and Dragons is the same. There's just no reason to support a company like this because this is the norm. It's unfortunate. I don't see them changing anytime soon, but it is always good to call out situations like this because they infuriate people when they do this. There are lifelong fans of their products who now have decided, you know what, I'm gonna stay away from whatever they're creating because I just can't trust them anymore. And now, as you can see, we've got another Wizards of the Coast situation on our hands because they're avoiding terms like witch, and they are considering retiring druid and shaman for the same reason. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.